over this and over you. Not waiting for an ocean to comfort me and smother me. Not leaving a reminder so you will know all that I felt. Not setting the timer. I'm a time bomb ready to explode. Not slow down, speeding in the wrong direction. So time, beating up your own reflection all time. Your life is one big disaster. Fall time, wait for me to clean up after. With no idea what to say, not in a glass case, in your museum on display. Not do anything just to stay in your good grace. Nah, it's never enough, but worth a try. All the same, not slow time, speeding in the wrong direction. So time, beating up your own reflection. All time, your life is one big disaster. Fall. Wait for me to clean up after. Slow done, speeding in the wrong direction. So done, beating up your own reflection. Oh, done, one big disaster. Fall time, wait for me to clean up after you. Expecting me to clean up after you. Wait for me to clean up after you. Wait for me to clean up after you. Expecting me to clean up. So, Clean Up After You. I think it's the oldest song that's on the album. I wrote that when I was 20. It was one of the first songs I wrote where I wasn't trying to write about like an imagined relationship or an imagined situation. I was writing about where I was at and how I was feeling and the situation and relationship I was in at the time and everything like that. Whereas a lot of the stuff that I wrote in my sort of mid to late teens, maybe because I didn't have the life experience, I would write what I imagined a singer-songwriter would write. Do you know what I mean? Which is a kind of an odd thing. I wrote, pretty much everything, bar a couple of things. That a lot of the stuff I wrote before that, I sort of almost wrote as an exercise. And Clean Up After You was one of the first things I wrote where I was like, no, I can actually write about the situation I'm in right now and the headspace I'm in right now, and it will make sense and it will be worth doing. It's sort of emblematic to me of that sort of it's I like the song and I like the lyric and everything, but it feels a little bit adolescent to me. It feels like I wouldn't be able to write that now. It's very a lot of the stuff I wrote that sort of very early 20s was very sort of finger pointy and, I feel like this and it's all your fault sort of thing. You're the one that's doing this to me and I'm, I very rarely sort of took responsibility for the way I was feeling. And was, very rarely able to actually look at myself and go, actually, no, a lot of this is you, or pretty much all of this is you, which came later. The stuff that I started to write sort of mid-20s to now, it's much more, trying to be much more sort of even-handed and, But it's a good tune. I like the song. I like the lyric. But again, as with Anyone Will Do, it's a kind of snapshot of where I was at. I sort of look at it as a kind of snapshot of where I was at the time. The sort of mood and the headspace that I was in, and the situation that I was in at that point. And You'll Never Change as well is another one of those songs where it's just kind of finger pointy and it's you that's doing this to me, and and then you sort of realize later that it's actually really it's you projecting all your bullshit onto somebody else, and they could never really be as responsible as you think they are. They could never really have done all the things that you think they did, and then you're just projecting all your fucking baggage on them, which is easy to do when you're young, But in terms of the recording, that was one I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do. I came in with again a little bit like Anyone Will Do. I saw it as a fairly straight sort of indie rocky kind of slightly poppy thing. And I knew I wanted it to be the last song. I wanted to sort of finish on a high. You had Anyone Will Do and that, which is these two sort of fairly up-tempo songs, which I only realized later are very similar. They're very, they're both in C, they're quite straight ahead, similar tempo, similar feel. Same key, very similar chord progressions. And I only realized later, I was like, even when I was sequencing the album, I didn't think, And I was like, are they a little too similar? But nobody's noticed, Maybe if I sold, 1 million, then somebody would have said, or if I got reviewed by all these people that I never got reviewed by, somebody would have said they're very fucking similar, but nobody's mentioned it yet. I'm blown, maybe I've blown up my own spot saying that now. Don't care. But no, Clean Up After You, it's one of those ones that, again, I wrote it when I was 20. And there's a couple of things that I would still play from when I was about 19. There's maybe two or three things that I wrote when I was about 19 that I would still do, things that I would still play. But Clean Up After You, it's one of those ones I remember when I left uni at 21. I kind of cleared the decks because the set that I'd been playing, whatever it was, 19 and 20, I'd come up with this whole set of songs. I had, guts of an hour of all these things. I wrote a lot of songs when I was 19. I wrote, I pretty much, I was at the tech and I was doing bits and pieces, but I never stopped writing. For whatever reason, I was, you don't realize it at the time, but I was super inspired for whatever reason. I wrote a lot of songs, and I started gigging at 19. I started gigging my own songs, and I started trying to make something happen then. And I remember, 19 and 20 doing a fair amount of gigging and a wee bits of recording and, just demos and stuff. But I just remember I left uni at 21, started doing the open mics again, started getting wee spots at gigs. And I basically cleared the decks and I had, what was it, like Clean Up After You and Cold Bones, and then things which I also wrote when I was 20. Wasting My Time, which I wrote when I was 20. It was a kind of country-ish song I had, and then a couple of things I wrote when I was 19, and that was, I started from scratch. And then, as I said, for the You'll Never Change story, You'll Never Change was the thing that sort of pulled everything together. I wrote that just before I turned 22, about 2 weeks before I turned 22 or something. And that was the one that pulled everything together. And it was like, okay, I've got a set now. Because before then it was like, I've got a bunch of songs. But at sometimes it's a sort of, you have a linchpin that just pulls everything together and makes it make sense and focuses everything. And You'll Never Change was that for me. But looking back, Clean Up After You it's one of those ones, my memory of it is that it's one of those classic examples of it. You write it in 5 minutes. You write it in just about as long as it takes to play it. I like the riff. I like the lyric. I like the feeling of it. I think myself and Shane did a good job on the recording of it and the production side. Shane, on the production side, I really had no real input on the production. My head was up. My whole making the first album, I was all over the place, and I really wasn't in a fit state to pull an album together. Do all think like a producer and be able to find threads and pull the thing together and make it make sense as a cohesive piece of work. And that was Shane's job. Shane was able to do that, and fair play to him for making something that makes sense, because I wouldn't have been able to if you had the headspace that I was on, about a little, around about 2 years ago when we started making the Romance and Melodrama album. If you'd said to me, right, you're producing, it's you that's doing this, and what do you want to do? I hadn't a clue. I basically used the recording of the first album as therapy in a way, because I was fucking all over the place. I was very fragile. I think fragile is the best way to describe it. My mental state was fairly fragile, and I basically just poured everything into the work and just got the head down and just concentrated on just make the record and try and make a good record, and I think we did. Even though, and I feel like with this one, it's, because it's the last song on the album, maybe I can sort of sum up the album in general. As I sort of wrap it up in a way. So I don't know how long this story is going to be. It might be long enough. I mean, we started making the album a little under 2 years ago. I think we started in like August of 2019 or something. It's August. It's August now. But, so I think it was around about August of 2019, or maybe early September of 2019. We started work on the Romance and Melodrama album, the first Hutch album. And there's a lot that I would change if I could go, if in a perfect world, if I could have me way and make the perfect version of that album, there are certainly things that I would go back and change. I mean, but the fact that we worked remotely using Splice and sending files back and forth, the fact that we, which means we weren't even in the same room making it, the fact that we had no budget, I'd never properly attempted to make an album before. There'd been some wee, bits and pieces, but nothing. I'd never actually sat down and said, okay, starting now, and again, as I say, my head was fucking firmly supplanted up my hole making that first album, and my voice is, pretty all over the place, and again, I'd never had to do that amount of sort of intensive work of tracking songs. Had barely ever played the click track. I could count on the fingers of one hand the amount of times I'd played the click track before that, which is, which might not sound like a lot, but it's a pretty big adjustment if you've never done it, and if you're playing on your own and you come up with your own sort of sense of rhythm, your own sort of way of playing, and then you end up having to play to a metronome, which they're not overly forgiving things at the best of times, But, I think, and again, I would say for the album, sounding the way it does, feeling the way it does, any sort of commonalities, any threads that we're able to go through there, and any sort of unifying themes, that's all thanks to Shane, and Shane Byrne should be the person that it's that was his idea. I as I say, I was in no fit state to pull an album together at that point, But I feel like it's, I think it's a strong record, and I like the songs. I feel like in terms of an album of songs, I don't know if I'm gonna, I think it's around about the strongest album of songs that I'm capable of at the moment. I mean, I don't know what I'll do in the future. But as a sort of snapshot of, I suppose, I look at it as if somebody said to me, between the ages of 19 or probably 20 and 27, somebody said, okay, play your, the way I looked at it was like, play a support slot of your best songs and your most immediate songs. What would you do? And it would be those songs, So I tried to pick the ones that I knew people would connect to, and people had connected to in the past, and and we treated every song as a single, basically. The way we recorded and arranged them, and the way Shane produced it, was we basically treated every single song as a single. We tried to get the most out of the songs as humanly possible. Again, as I say, I personally, there are certain things that I would go back and change, but I feel like for all the restrictions and all the hands that we had tied behind our backs and everything that we had to push through, I feel like we made a really strong album, and I'm really chuffed with how it came out, But yeah, so I suppose that's the end of the Songs and Stories series for this time. We are we've started again. We've recommenced recording on the second Hutch album. So hopefully that'll be wrapped up and ready to go by the end of 2021. Ready for release in early 2022. I we'll see what happens, but it's another album of really, really strong songs, if I do say so myself, and it's gonna be a little different to the first album. It's gonna be a little darker. It's not as we're not treating them like singles. We're not treating them like pop songs. We're digging in a little bit, and we're trying to make something that's a little darker and a little more slow burning and a little bit more brooding, and we'll see what happens, But yeah, I'll do another Hutchcast soon, just to keep you updated when we start recording the album again proper. I'll make another podcast again on the Hutch Patreon. But yeah, thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed the series, and see you again.